The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest stories in the NBA.
Bro, this team is finding ways every single game.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast.
The Pistons beat the Boston Celtics. And they didn't just beat the Boston Celtics. They took BTA to the Celtics. You know how to fill it in. Belt to bleep. They dominated the Boston Celtics. They won this game by 20 points. Joel Mazzulla emptied out the bench with around 4 minutes left in this game. We talked about this on yesterday's episode. I came on here and said the Boston Celtics are the NBA champions for a reason. They are a tough matchup for every team in the NBA. Expecting this team to beat the Celtics is unfair to them. If they lose, you know, it doesn't mean the season is fluke or the winning streak's fluke. Like, just be ready. If they do lose, don't freak out. It's not the end of the world. This is the NBA champs. Well, silly me. Like, you know what? Where and what am I looking for? I'm looking for something to hit me with. Like, stupid me. The Pistons won. Who cares about them potentially losing? They won this game. They beat the Boston Celtics, the NBA champions, at Little Caesars Arena. I understand the Philly game was big time without Cade, and it definitely is one of their most big time wins of the season. But this win right here is number one. I don't care what anyone says. This win right here is number one. They beat a team that is 42-17. They beat a team that just won the NBA championship last year. And yes, they didn't have Jalen Brown in this game, but they had Jason Tatum, Al Horford, Kristaps, Drew Holiday, and Derek White, along with Payne Pritchard. It's not like they were going against the B team. They were missing one dude. They still have 3 other damn near all-stars on their team. The Pistons came out here and showed up and showed out and took down the Boston Celtics to win 8 games in a row. 8 games. Who thought they would be doing this? Every podcast, it feels like. Actually, first, I want to say this. I'm so happy for you guys. I'm so happy for the rest of the Pistons fan base, because obviously how down the Pistons fan base has been, especially coming off last year. But even over the last 15 years, man, it's been tough. It's been tough. And you are watching the most fun, most joyful, the most hope, the most, just the light at the end of the tunnel is damn near blinding. It's right in all of our faces. It's blinding all of us. That's how bright the light at the end of the tunnel is for this team right now. They are 33-26. 33-26. We on the playback stream. One of the people that watches the stream with us and hosts it with me, our guy Matt Griffin, he's been on the podcast before. He let us know. He brought this point up. Not only are we talking about the Pistons just making the playoffs, not only are we talking about the Pistons potentially winning a playoff game, not only are we talking about the Pistons competing to try to win a playoff series, we are now in serious conversations to be had that the Pistons could be hosting home court in the playoffs, could be having home court advantage in the playoffs. They are 32-26. They have the same amount of wins as the 4th-seeded Pacers. They are a game behind the Pacers because the Pacers have played 2 less games. In their last 10 games, they are 8-2. Actually, make that 9-1 now, I believe. 9-1. Actually, no. The standings haven't updated yet. I'm wrong. The NBA standings have not updated yet. They're 33-26. So I believe that would put them right behind the Pacers because they played 1 less game. The Pistons are in a position where they are actually fighting for not just the playoffs, not just to win a playoff game. They are fighting to have home court advantage in the playoffs. Who the hell would have believed you if you said this 7 months ago when you were watching the worst season in Pistons history? Guys, there is no one that could have expected this team to be this good already. To expect this team to be this good already. They just keep finding ways to impress you, game in and game out. They are finding ways to win games in multiple different ways. The Hawks game, you have to win a shootout. Check mark. We can do that. This Clippers game, you have to win a defensive battle, low-scoring game. Check mark. We can do that. You have to win a game where Cade's not having a good shooting night. Check mark. We did that against the Boston Celtics of all teams. This team is the absolute bright spot of the Detroit sports scene right now. They have the city's attention. They have the city's support. They have the fan support. And they deserve it. And not only do they deserve the Detroit fan support, this city's support, which they're getting, it's about damn time they start getting some national love. And I'm not talking about a quick throwaway from Tim Legler. By the way, Legs, do a great job. Love to have you on the podcast one day. But they need more than just Tim Legler being the only one who wants to give them a little throwaway. They need some talk. They've won 8 in a row. The only team with more wins than... There's only 3 teams in the NBA with more wins than them since January 1st. Start talking about them, ESPN. Start talking about them, Fox Sports. Start talking about them. Because they deserve their respect. I'm not... You know what? From now on, when we talk about this team, I am no longer... I'm not making this mistake no more. We won't do it no more on this podcast. From now on, I am no longer saying anything the Pistons can't do something. Because I did not think they could beat the NBA champions. And they did that. I didn't think they would ever go on an 8-game win streak. They've done that. I didn't think they would beat Philadelphia on national stage without their best player, but they did that. Like, every which way we go, they do something that we think they can't do, that we think they shouldn't be able to do, and they do it. You are watching this young core develop in front of your eyes and lead the way. You are watching this veteran presence that Trajan Langdon brought in with all these vets. You're watching them be the absolute perfect vets for this team and for this city. Malik Beasley, damn near throw his jersey up in the rafters at this point. I give him a lifetime contract. If he's ever not a Detroit Piston again, I might lose it. And I think half the fan base will start crying. Hang his jersey up in the rafters at this point. That dude is crazy. This team this year is a special year. This is a year that Pistons fans are always going to remember. It doesn't have to end in a championship for this to be a memorable year that people talk about, because this year will be known as the year the Pistons turned things around. This will be known as the year that the Pistons became that respectable legacy franchise again. That they're no longer the laughingstock like they've been the last 15 years. They are now the respectable, really good team that deserves everyone's respect and can beat anyone on any given night, man. The Pistons won again. This was a fantastic game. Fantastic game. Took belt to blank to the Boston Celtics, bro. Absolutely fantastic win. Take down Jason Tatum. Take down Kristaps. Take down Drew, take down Derek White, take down Joe Mazzulla, and the Pistons survived 9 straight threes in that second quarter, by the way. They survived the Boston just clash of threes raining in. They survived that, and they still came out and came out on top. This team is legit, bro. Put some respect on their name.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Later today, the Nuggets take a trip to Milwaukee, where Denver is favored by 3. The Lakers are 5-point favorites over the Wolves in Los Angeles, and the Magic are 6-point home dogs versus the Warriors. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make everyone more FanDuel the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Jalen Brunson comes through with 12 of the Knicks' last 14 points.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast.
All right, Gavin, let's get into this 110-105 win for the Knicks. So as mentioned, Jalen Brunson, I think that's where we got to start, right? The Knicks have I think it was up to a 19-point lead at one point, blow it, end up going down to the Sixers. You don't love that. And then Jalen Brunson just fully takes over down the stretch of this game. 12 of the final 14 points for the Knicks. The most memorable one coming when the Knicks were down 2, I believe, at that particular moment. Marches down the floor, waves off everybody, says, "Give me Maxey one-on-one," goes one-on-one with him, and just hits a 3 right in his eye. Barely any hesitation. Didn't even really put like a crazy move on him or anything. Just kind of dribble, and then was like, okay, now it's time. And then shot it, makes it. Of course he does. He's Jalen Brunson. This is what he does. Huge clutch performance for him down the stretch on his way to 34 points and 7 assists, most of those assists of which I should say he racked up in the first quarter when, much like Mikal Bridges did with the points, which we'll talk about later in the game, he was just a maestro early on in this game, getting Mikal and others involved with 5 assists in the first quarter. So just a fantastic all-around game for Jalen Brunson.
He had literally all of his assists in the first quarter. I think he did 7 of them. So yeah,
I only looked up when he had 5 at one point, but yeah, whatever. You take it. It's good.
It was good, but I don't know. We'll talk about it. It was a tale of 3 games, or I would even go so far as to say 4 games. 4 quarters, 4 games. Like first quarter was like just dominant, clinical from the Knicks, exactly what you wanted to see. Second quarter, most of the third, like cruising along. Third, most of the fourth, like George and Maxey after just a abysmal first half. That might be a low point in a season. Full of low points for Philly. They both come to life. And then Jalen Brunson just slams the door late. I love the relationship that's developing between him and Maxey at this point, where Maxey's like just like his incredibly talented little brother, but Jalen still has the upper hand, at least at this point. Maybe that'll flip at some point. But he is the clutchest player in the NBA right now. I cannot imagine. I watch a lot of other basketball. Obviously, I don't watch anyone else as much as the Knicks. I cannot imagine anyone has hit just like the sheer amount of shots in the final few minutes. And we have stats for this. I know outside of Nikola Jokic, like no one has come close to both his volume and his efficiency. That is maybe the 4th time all season. Like maybe I'm underselling it, 4th, 5th, 6th, that he's hit like a step back 3 or a step back long 2 to end a game. It feels like, Alex, we've had maybe 5 of them now just in the last, like, I don't know, like 12, 15 games, like over and over again. You give him the ball late, he gets to a spot, he makes the shot. I felt like over his first 2 years, he did have his share of those, but there were a bunch of times where they would go in and out. And he just like he just slammed the door, right? Like 9 points in a row at one point, getting to the free throw line over and over and over again. Had one where he ran a pick and roll with Precious, and they basically just ignored Precious, and he had 3 guys around him and somehow like navigated his way through the thicket to get a lefty layup in. Of course, made his free throws down the stretch. 14 points total in the final 16 minutes. Finished the game 14 of 14 overall from the foul line. I thought it was just a brilliant playmaking start for him, and then closes the game with his scoring, which is everything you could ever want from a Hall of Fame point guard, which Jalen Brunson will be. This is a game the Knicks very could have easily lost, and if they lost, you would have said, hey, they deserved it. They played with their food, but it's happened so many times this season where the Knicks have done that, and they've won anyways because they have Jalen Brunson and the other team doesn't.
Yeah, I'll say I have my stat correction: 15 of 16 from the free throw line.
Oh, there you go.
Not
started
quite
14 to 4. There you go. But he also started with 5 assists, so we're set.
We're even. Yeah. So we're on top of it today. We're on top of it. But this is why we have co-hosts, right? It's so that the other one can fact check while the other one's talking.
It's a puzzle. Yeah.
At any rate, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it was a show of Jalen Brunson in his purest form, right down the stretch. It's just this guy. There's no like doubting him, especially once it hits this point of the season. It seems like we've kind of hit that point where I think someone had one of those graphics, like the ones that it's usually for like football, where it's like, the beginning of the game, and it's like a little brackets, and it's like, like, oh, this is great, and then like, oh my god, I hate my life for like 85% of it, and then like the final little part is like, oh my god, I love this team so much. And there was one that someone put out with Brunson recently where it like showed like the entirety of the NBA schedule, like on a little, graphic somehow. And it was like, the first like part of the season, it was like, oh, Brunson's pretty good. And then there's like a middle part where it's like, did Brunson forget how to play basketball? And then at a certain point around like February, you just go, this is the greatest basketball player to ever live. Like from like February all the way through the end of the season. This is just, it's the Jalen Brunson experience. Like he starts off strong, pretty strong, and then he'll have a little slump in the middle of the season, and then he just catches absolute fire down the stretch and wins you a lot of games. And this is probably why. I mean, I referenced it the other week when we were trying to predict like the record the rest of the way out, making bold predictions and whatever. But like, probably a big part of the reason why the Knicks have very consistently won like 64% of their games after the All-Star break every single year is, no matter what their record was prior to it, is that, you have this guy on your team that can just make these clutch shots when you need them. And, I think that this game was just another show of it. I mean, that it just goes to show like the kind of run that he's on right now too. Sometimes, and, maybe even earlier this season, I would have seen this happening, the Knicks blowing this lead and whatever, and been like, oh man, like, this is going to be a really tough loss when this doesn't work out. Like it's just, they're letting it go. They're letting go of the rope too early, and now they're going to get burned for it, whatever. And yet down the stretch of this one, I was just kind of like, yeah, let's see how this plays out. Like, I bet Brunson will do it. It's like you're kind of hitting that point where you don't want to get too reliant on the fact that this guy can just score on anybody anytime he wants to. And yet it's hard not to feel that little security blanket of like, well, at least my team has Jalen Brunson and the other team.
Oh, yeah.
Like if it's close down the stretch, like that was basically how I felt at the end of this one. Of course, doesn't help that like the Sixers are playing horrendous and had lost like 6 straight games coming into this one. But clearly, Paul George is a little more motivated now. He announced earlier today that he's taking a step back from podcasting to focus on his basketball career.
Can I ask you something? Did you think that was Centel when you first read it? Because I 100% thought that was Centel. I was like, this is really good because it's within the realm of something that could happen. But obviously this is fake. And then I looked and I saw Centel got banned today. R.I.P. Centel. And I was like, oh no, this is real. He said this once they're 20 games under 500. Joel Embiid is like his knee is in a coma. And like the season's over. He's like, you know what? I'm gonna stop doing the podcast now.
Yeah, my fanfic on this is that Centel saw that and then said, "There's no way I could ever up this. Like, like life has overtaken art at this point."
Yeah.
But yeah, I had
this thing bowed out of the game from there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's really funny because I had that exact same like interaction with a coworker. I said to my one coworker like, "Hey, yo, check this out. Like, check this stuff out. Sorry. Paul George just said that he's going to stop focusing on podcasting and instead focus on, playing basketball instead." And they were like, "That's Centel, right?" And I was like, "I don't think I just got Centel. It was from a reliable, like source that, sends like updates on one app." And then I looked it up. I'm like, no, there's literally a video clip. Like, this is for real. Somehow
there was a stat out there that he like made field goals in hours podcasted. It's like 230 to 150. Like it's way too close. It's way too close.
He had like demonstrably more podcast clips put out than field goals made this year at one point, and it's crazy. Anyway, that was a fun little aside. But at any rate, thank goodness the Knicks have Jalen Brunson and not Paul George, I guess is the moral of the story.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Later today, the Nuggets take a trip to Milwaukee, where Denver is favored by 3. The Lakers are 5-point favorites over the Wolves in Los Angeles, and the Magic are 6-point home dogs versus the Warriors. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Celebrating Jalen Clark's new standard contract. We'll talk about what he's done to earn that deal.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast.
Lots to get to here. I want to start with Jalen Clark and give him some flowers for what he's done to earn his standard contract. Remember when the Timberwolves drafted him in the second round? I want to rewind a little bit. This is summer of 2023, so not this last summer's draft, but the draft before. Quick history lesson is he was best defensive player in college basketball. Tore his Achilles in March of 2023. Before that, was seen by some as a first-round pick, including, I think it was Sam Vecini at The Athletic had him as a lottery pick. And the Timberwolves did too, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. The Timberwolves had him very high on their board, but because of the injury, he, of course, fell into the second round. Minnesota, remember, that was the Leonard Miller draft too. The Timberwolves drafted Leonard Miller at number 33 in that draft, and Jalen Clark fell all the way to 53. And they took him there. And I'll read a quote here from Tim Connolly on draft night in just a minute. But the Wolves, when they drafted him, decided to sign him to a 2-year, 2-way deal, which is obviously allowed. It's relatively rare. We're starting to see more second-round picks that are signing these 2-year, 2-way deals. And the Wolves, there's a lot of benefits to this here. One, obviously, it's a no-brainer deal for Jalen Clark to get the guaranteed money, even if it's the vet minimum. For him to get guaranteed money, that's obviously more than a 2-way deal for the rest of the season and for next year, a guy coming off a major injury, like, feel great for him to get that guaranteed money. It's also probably a steal for the Timberwolves. It certainly looks like it right now. You know, this dude's what? I mean, how many games has he played in his career? Like 17. He's played in 17 games so far, but it really feels like a steal based on everything we've seen from him. And so for next year for the roster, to get a rotation guy locked in at a vet minimum deal is awesome for the Timberwolves. The other thing it does is that it encourages players to sign to, like, if nothing else, it could be a tiebreaker when guys are considering the Wolves for a 2-way deal, whether it's a second-round pick being willing to sign a 2-year, 2-way deal because they could say, look what we did for Jalen Clark. You go back a little further, it was, I guess, initially not David Kahn. Oh my goodness. Gerson Rosas front office. I was looking at past drafts today. So David Kahn's name was before my eyes more times than it would be on any normal day. Gerson Rosas, drafted Jalen Noel and everything, but like, that's another example. Naz Reid was undrafted, but Jalen Noel was a second-round pick. McLaughlin was undrafted. The Wolves have a recent history of rewarding these guys who play hard and earn a spot. And now Jalen Clark gets converted from a 2-way deal to a standard deal after just 17 games. That's going to help when the Wolves recruit undrafted guys, when they recruit, when they're trying to sign second-round picks, to say, look what we did for Jalen Clark. This is guaranteed money now that Jalen Clark gets. And again, it should be a steal for Minnesota moving forward. Going back to that draft, I want to read a quote that our guy Jack Borman, who is on virtually every postcast for us this season over at Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube, and also the Locked On Wolves postcasts are posted to this audio feed. So if you're listening to audio, not watching on YouTube, a couple episodes before this, you'd find the postcast from the thrilling win over OKC on Monday night with Luke Inman and Jack Borman. Jack, of course, used to be the site editor at Canis Hoopus, does an awesome job covering the Wolves for us on the postcast side, the Locked On Sports Minnesota side. He had a quote way back in June of 23. He tweeted this out. I bookmarked it. Actually, I don't think you could bookmark tweets at that point in time, but I saved the link to this tweet because it was a great quote from Tim Connolly. On Wolves draft night in 2023, asked about Jalen Clark, the quote from Tim Connolly was, quote, "We're excited, super excited about Jalen Clark. We had him as a high first-round grade all year." A high first-round grade for Jalen Clark. Now, most people, I think, did have him in the first round before the Achilles tear. High first round is interesting. There's obvious limitations to what he does offensively, or at least there was as a prospect. To me, he's looked way better as a pro offensively than I ever expected. I shouldn't say ever expected, than I expected to see in the first dozen plus games that he plays at the NBA level. In fact, let me do his scouting report. What I have, that my scouting report after watching Jalen Clark leading into the draft, studying up on him, and then after they drafted him, digging even more into Jalen Clark. What I had down for Jalen Clark, I've done this a couple times before on the show, but it's been a while, and this is in honor, giving the flowers to giving Jalen Clark his flowers for earning this contract. But here are my exact notes. I had, for Wolves fans to give some context, I compared him to Josh Minott, a guard version of Josh Minott. I said smaller, less athletic, but more polished version of Josh Minott, guard version of Josh Minott. I said he's got a nose for the ball. He's outstanding both off and on the ball defensively. He finds the ball finds him, whatever, defensively. his size is fine for guarding the point of attack. He's maybe a little bit on the small side, and he has modest athleticism in order to play the three at the NBA level. He's a little small / a little bit of a modest athlete to play the three. And I think that's still true. The Wolves don't really want to play him at the three. The Wolves prefer to play big, although they've found a lot of success playing Nas at the five with the Rudy injury. And even before the Rudy injury, when they closed a couple games like that. And then I also said hard to undersell how important his rebounding and defensive IQ are. As a guard, he's an outstanding rebounder. Now, we haven't necessarily seen that in his 17 games as a pro, although he's been a pretty good offensive rebounder. But in college, the rebound rate as a guard was incredible. I'm going to see if I could real quick. I didn't have this pulled up, but I was just literally reading off the scouting report I had saved. But I'm going to look at his rebound rate so far as a pro. Yeah, it's really low. In fact, only higher than Rob Dillingham. But his offensive rebound rate is actually 6th on the Timberwolves. And if you want to, actually, it's better than that. Take out Leonard Miller and Tristan Newton. He's behind Luka Garza, who you could also pull out if you want. Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle. Then it's Jalen Clark for his offensive rebound rate. So again, a nose for the ball. And currently the Timberwolves game plan is basically all the time we're crashing, right? We're trying to get offensive rebound. And Jalen Clark is doing that. He's not got a ton of defensive rebounds, mostly because he's often guarding the ball, right? Other notes I had on Jalen Clark. I had stiff, robotic shot. Didn't shoot a good free throw percentage in college either, but he shows good touch on floaters and around the rim, which is super interesting. His shot has looked much better as a pro. Very limited sample size, obviously, but it's looked much better as a pro than I ever expected. In fact, to this point, Jalen Clark's only attempted 66 shots as a pro, 28 of them threes, and he's shooting 43% on threes, right? So I hope I'm wrong. The shot still looks a little stiff. Robotic's strong. I wouldn't say that now. He's a little stiff shooting the ball, but he's making it. And again, in college, he didn't shoot the ball well from the free throw line, which a lot of times can be an indicator that somebody's not necessarily going to, quote, figure it out. Let's see. In college at UCLA, he was a 66% free throw shooter over 3 years, shot a shade under 70% as a junior in his last year in college. So, that wasn't great, but the good touch on floaters and around the rim is positive. And then I also said, I noted he had a nose for the ball defensively. On offense, I said he's a good cutter. It feels like he might even have less offensive upside than somebody like a Josh Okogie, which is an interesting thing that I had that. But I said, I feel this early on plus floater touch is something that Okogie never had, is what I had. So, which I think is true. And this was when I did this was probably right about when Josh Okogie was having like a mini resurgence as an offensive player with Phoenix. And of course now he's with Charlotte and whatever, but he's still a functional NBA player. And Jalen Clark, I think, has a higher upside than Josh Okogie because he showed some of that offensive upside, the touch, albeit, he's a little bit slower, he's not as athletic, but that's the one thing I would say I feel differently about now. And I know it's only been 17 games, but I really, truly feel like there's more there than I thought there was at the time on the offensive end. I think we've seen enough to tell us that that's probably the case. So yeah, the scouting report otherwise feels pretty spot on when it comes to Jalen Clark. I just think he's a real lockdown defender. I think he can lock basically anybody down. We've seen it, basically a game and a half worth against SGA. That's been really fun to see. I should also note on the shooting side, in the G League, he shot the ball well from outside the arc. In the tip-off tournament, he was 36% across 16 games in the G League. In the regular season G League games, he's 44% in just 4 games. And this is shooting more than half his shots from outside the arc too. He's also free throw percentage still isn't great. So there's certainly growth to be had there for Jalen Clark, but there's a lot to like about what he's done so far as an NBA player.